Theory starts with a man saying that he was a slave-born imperial guard who died protecting the mad emperor who ended up making a pact with the demon. He wonders if he's going to be remembered as a knight who never abandoned his loyalty until the end, but perhaps as a foolish loser who failed to read the tides of time. In the end, neither sits well with him. We are introduced to Cain later, the imperial guard of the emperor. He says it would have been cleaner to vanish from everyone's memory, but we see a man asking why he turned his blade at the last moment, calling him an idiot. This is the rebel leader named Halo Reston. He calls Cain an idiot. Cain was born an orphan. He's lived for 29 years making his own choices, and he shouldn't start a fight for no reason. Halo says that he could have fled, asking why he made a choice like this. He starts crying, telling him to open his eyes, calling him a bastard and shaking him, but Cain's too far gone as the life in his eyes has already left. We see him walking in a watery afterlife. The sky looks like Van Gogh's painting, and he asks if this is what death is. He says that for freedom this isn't much at all, as it seems like he could be walking for eternity. Still, seeing Halo crying like that, it felt good to have someone care for him. But he says he'll manage on his own, and he decides to savor the so-called freedom. A blue aura starts to form in front of him. He turns, wondering what it is, as it flies directly into his eye. He's confused, and as if the painting was being washed away, he opens his eyes, seeing a man who looks very similar to Halo, saying that he was born healthy, calling him Karen. Cain's confused, and the man looks toward his father, asking if he'd like to hold him. The man picks him up, saying that he's not even crying, and he's a sturdy boy. Cain is still trying to think about what's going on, and the man tells him to grow strong and healthy, saying he can't wait to see what his youngest grandson does. Karen recognizes him as Halo, saying it is definitely him. He's just old and wrinkly now. Cain starts crying, and Halo says he didn't mean to make him cry. Cain tries to understand, asking if he really became Halo's grandson. It jumps to some time later, and we hear a man saying that the knight Cain later who met death alongside the emperor 45 years ago, though he could not stop his lord from straying onto a wrongful path, has come down to them as a symbol of unwavering loyalty, standing by his legion till the end. That concludes the latest opinion of their modern history society. He turns asking the young master what he thinks. We see Cain asking what his view of it is. The professor says he thinks the Grand Duke simply wished to restore his friend's honor. After all, the story that Duke Halo and Lord Cain were friends is well known. Cain asks if he really thinks that's the case, and the professor asks what he means. Cain says that he thinks his grandfather holds a grudge against his dead friend, and that's why he's deliberately gilding his name. He was reborn as Karen Reston, third son of Halo and the only child of Count Pale. The professor asks what he's talking about. Cain says that because his grandfather, rather than joining him on the road to revolution, can accept that regardless of Cain's will, which is to have a quiet death, not to be called a hero. The professor asks what he means by a quiet death, saying of course there are records that the duel between the two of them ended far too quickly for men of such skill, those only hearsay. If he supposes that Cain chose death instead of joining his friend in a fight to the death or in a revolution, it becomes reasonable. But he can't believe such a claim was made by a 10-year-old. Cain asks what he thinks. The professor says that if he agrees with that opinion, the Duke's knights might charge him with blasphemy and kill him. Hesitantly says a politically correct answer that he's never considered this perspective. Cain laughs, saying he's just kidding, asking why he looks rattled. He explains that right now his name is Karen, and as we can see, he's the youngest grandson of the Restukim for the time being. It took him a while to piece the situation together, but in the end he is now Halo's grandson, and he asks how dare that bastard make him a hero, saying that he should have understood even without him saying it. We see his father kneeling, and Cain introduces him as Pale, Halo's youngest son, and that he is his father. Cain clears his throat, and Pale asks if his lesson is over, and he says yes, asking if he was praying again, and if he's still worried about his awakening ceremony. His father is surprised he could tell and apologizes. Cain asks what he's sorry for, and his father says that unlike his two uncles, he never awakened magic power, so he worries he might have passed that down burden to him. Cain puts his hand on his father's shoulder and says no matter what anyone says, he's the greatest father to him. His father feels touched, hugs him saying he's the greatest son, and pinches his cheeks. He asks what he'd like for dinner, and of course Karen says meat. That night he's laying in bed throwing a rock into the air, thinking about the awakening ceremony. He remembers Halo talking to him about it, and how it's a family ritual to unlock an 8 magic power. Cain says that means it's something you're born with, like a silver spoon, and he couldn't care less. Halo tells him not everyone can awaken, and even if he does, it doesn't mean he qualifies to become head of the family. Besides, there's said to be a secret passed down only to the head. Cain, curious, asks what it is, if it's a treasure or a grimoire. Halo says if it's something like that, he might be interested. Cain says only a little, but he'd like to live quietly somewhere remote. Halo laughs, and Cain says if he's mocking his modest dream, reminding him he has a weapon in his hand. Halo says fine, when he becomes head, he'll tell you the secret. Cain says the ritual doesn't matter anymore. As he starts to release a blue aura, he tells his father not to worry, as he has already finished his awakening, and we learn it's been done for a while. The next day in town, his father asks him if he's amazed, and Karen says yes, as it's his first time on a train. His mother says much of the technology used was possible thanks to his father's sponsorship. Karen says he knew it, but Pale says his wife is just flattering him. She says that even if he says that, it's truly great, and he knows it. Karen says of course, and tells his father he's proud of him, and it's true. This man may not have awakened magic, but he alone supports 30% of the Duke's finances. With his kind mother and devoted father, he thinks they're perfect parents. They hop on the train and ride along the tracks. Karen looks out the window and spots the Reston family's main estate, the Osiris Fortress. There, he'll see his grandfather again, and also his old friend Halo. He smiles, saying he's made him a great figure of history, but he'll become the opposite, making sure all his worries are in vain, and that he'll become somebody unbefitting of the family name. His father also sees his aura after waking up. Cain tells his old friend to wait for him, as his precious grandson is coming. The train finally arrives at the station, and when they exit, an old man welcomes them, saying that he's finally arrived and it's been a while. Pale says that it's been around a year, asking if he's been well, and we learn that his name is Hinrich. He says thanks to the Duke's grace, he is always well. Karen asks if those knights are from the Sea Wave Knights, and they stare at him. He says that they've already noticed he has awakened his mana, and they're definitely different from the guys in their territory. Though it's expected for that to be the case, it's only a matter of time before Halo heard about it, but it's not like it matters. Hinrich says that he'll guide them to the main palace now, and Pale tells him to lead the way. Once they get inside, a woman tells Karen that the Count asked for him to wait here while he greets the family elders and call if he needs anything. He thanks her and says that this is just a reception room, but it's huge, and that the Osiris Fortress is really something else. He says that there's nothing to do here. Maybe I should have asked him to take me to the library. Someone laughs at him as he's looking out over the city, saying going to the library as soon as he arrives at the main house, just like the rumors say. He's a real bookworm. Karen turns, wondering who this kid is, and the kid says that since he's your uncle's kid, the chances of him awakening are slim, so he better hit the books. If he wants to make a crazy amount of money like the commoners, he should be just like his father, the barber up his hair. Karen starts to get pissed, and the kid, startled, asks what's wrong, and if he really wants to fight. He says he's going to use a little bit of his magic power to give you a preview. Karen glares, asking if there's a mad dog growing up in the main house. The kid starts to realize he might have picked a bad fight and says, no way. Realizing Karen is releasing his aura, he asks when he awakened, as his father never said anything about it. Karen says of course his father wouldn't have, as even his own father doesn't know yet. And more importantly, they have a problem. There's no need for two mad dogs in the same house. He'll be taking that role, and he tells him to step aside. The kid asks what he's talking about, and Karen says with that in mind, it's time for him to finally get a beating. The elders are having their meeting, talking about how Karen has awakened, and 3 captains of the Night Order already confirmed it when they accompanied him to the station. The elders of the Rest family discuss it, and the second young Master Ringo says that to think that he would awaken his magic power and even inform the main family. He wonders what Pale is plotting. Pale says of course not. He didn't even know. The first son tells Ringo to stop with baseless speculation, as Pale has an awakened magic power, so it's understandable he didn't notice. Ringo calls him pathetic. A man barges into the room telling Hinrich to come quickly. Hinrich asks what's wrong, and the guy is worried, wondering how to explain it. Even the 3 brothers wonder what's going on.
We see Ringo storming off behind the butler, and Pale says there must be a misunderstanding. Ringo's face fills with anger as he sees his son beaten up, sprawled on the couch. Karen goes to greet him, and Ringo picks him up by the collar, asking how dare he not know his manners, asking what the hell he was doing and what he was thinking by doing something like this. Pale tells him to stop, and Karen says it's simple why he did it. It's because Leo was insulting his father, and if it were his father, there's no way he would have just stood by. Ringo says he's spouting nonsense now, and Pale puts his hand on his shoulder, telling him that's enough. Ringo tells Pale to back off, saying it's all because of his poor upbringing that his son's acting out. Hinrich tells them all to stop, as the lord of the family said he will pass judgment himself. Pale grabs Karen, telling his brother if he didn't hear him and to let him go. He asks if he's okay, and Karen says he's fine. Hinrich says they should all go together, and Ringo still looks annoyed. Pale says they should get going as well, and Karen says yes, it's been a long time and he's finally going to meet Halo. Inside his study, Halo asks what the reason was for causing such a huge incident the moment he arrived. Pale goes to explain, but Halo says he wasn't asking him. He wants to hear the answer from his son directly. He knows Pale's not thoughtless enough to cause trouble, and that he's raised his son to not cause trouble without considering the consequences. So there must be a reason, and he wants to know every detail. Karen is surprised he'll hear him out before punishing him, saying acting so generous doesn't suit him, and he tells him it's because Leo insulted his father. Ringo asks him to tell the truth, and Halo slams the desk telling him to be quiet, asking how dare he raise his voice. Ringo apologizes. Halo says they can call for Leo and confirm the facts, asking Heinrich if Leo's treatment is finished. He says that it is, and he'll bring him at once. Halo says that's not the only thing he wanted to ask Karen. Karen says if he's asking about his magic power, he awakened it 3 years ago. Pale and his brothers are surprised, and Halo asks why he kept it hidden from his father until now. For him to do it on his own 3 years ago is crazy. Karen says he only realized it was magic power after reading a book later, and after he found out, he decided it was best to keep it secret. Halo asks why, and Karen says that having a secret is fun. And it was even more fun because the knights in his territory had no idea either. Halo asks if that's really all, and Karen says yes. The butler brings in Leo, bandaged up. Halo asks if it's true he insulted his uncle. Leo is hesitant to reply, and Karen puts on a scene saying that even though his cousin made fun of his father, despite that he should not have hit him, and he committed a sin. Leo says he never said this, but he has a PTSD attack of Karen's aura, so he gets terrified and goes along with it. Halo asks if it's really true, and Leo says yes. Halo says he sees. For now, since the awakening ceremony is tomorrow, he'll postpone the punishment of both until after it is over, and they should keep that in mind as they're dismissed. Halo then asks Heinrich what he thinks about Pale's son. He says he's not sure about other things, but he felt there were many aspects that would be interesting. Halo says he agrees. Not only did he awaken his magic power on his own, but he hid it until now. Furthermore, he seemed to be questioning the skill level of the knights assigned to his father's territory, as if subtly pointing out that by assigning such unskilled men, he was neglecting him. Hinrich says he's overthinking it, but Halo says he wishes that were the case. This child is different, and he'll find out what's special about him tomorrow. After all, they cannot know everything simply from the fact that he awakened his magic power. Whether he completes the awakening ceremony safely tomorrow, or if he doesn't, what he'll obtain there, he's extremely curious to find out. It takes us into the forest outside the city, and we see an altar. This must be where the ceremony will take place. The next day, at night, we see everybody in the family walking into the forest. Karen says the elders of the Reston family, although retired from active duty, he can sense that they are all incredibly skilled, and that Tails, the eldest son of Halo, and his daughter Leon are here, as well as Ringo and his second son Leo. For the whole family to be making such a fuss, it must be more important than he thought initially. They now stand before the altar, and Karen stares at it, asking if that is the Stone of Oath. Halo says it's time to begin, and that when he passes through the rift opened by the stone, beyond it a world the Stone of Oath shows him will unfold. They say that the world shown by the Stone of Oath is different for every person, and the ceremony will end when he uses the weapon he gets there to destroy the world. Karen says he's ready, and Halo just stares at him before deciding that it's time. He raises the amulet, wishing him good luck. As it starts to form a connection with the Stone of Oath, it unleashes a rift that looks as if the world they're in is some kind of simulation. The way it loads in, but time and space itself starts to rip apart. The pressure is enough to make them brace themselves for it. Halo asks him what he's doing and if he's scared. Pale asks if he's okay, and Karen says he'll be right back. He's supposed to use the weapon he gets from the world beyond to destroy it, and that'll be easy since destroying things was always his job. As he enters, Halo looks proud but warns him to overcome his fear. Karen enters the Matrix. The rest all stare, and when he is teleported inside, Karen is seen as the emperor of the empire he used to serve. During the day of the revolution,
Karen wonders why this is what he's seeing, and of all places, this is what came from his memories. It's trying to make him feel guilty by showing him his innocent comrades. As they get closer to the throne room, he hears a voice saying that his world is cruel and desolate, calling him the child of the blue wolves. They say that the time of the covenant has come, so they shall fulfill what was made with his ancestor. The door opens, and he asks if it's a demon. The voice continues, saying that the blood that flows in his veins cannot be invaded by a mere lowly demon, so he needs to overcome his fear and ascend to the throne. He pushes past the gates, and the voice says that what he desires is in here. When he enters, he says it's been a while, and it looks like there's something on the throne. A throne the emperor wanted to protect so much that he even made a deal with the demon. He didn't know that his comrades and he died because of that, and it feels like he's walking on their corpses just to reach here. The voice continues, saying that the child who received the blessings of the cold North Sea, though his soul has been lost, has finally arrived, and on behalf of the Blue Clan, it welcomes him. The sword that he used when he was Cain, the sword the emperor bestowed upon him, is here, a demonic sword called Ruin. The voice tells him to infuse his mana into it, and he says that's a demonic sword that eats the user's soul. The voice tells him that the evil thoughts that dwelt in it were extinguished by his grandfather, and what he's seeing is merely a distorted form placed by a demon. The voice tells him to awaken it once more, saying that only he can do it. He wonders if it's okay for him to touch it, saying he might return to his past self due to countless lives obeying the emperor's orders. He then recalls his grandfather's words, telling him to overcome his fear. Now he realizes what it is, saying he was being unusually kind. The true purpose of this ceremony isn't just to obtain a weapon, but for the heir who has awakened the Azor clarity to overcome the source of his fear. He grabs the sword, saying if that's the case, there's only one thing left to do. He starts to infuse his mana into it, and when he does, he's teleported to the depths of an ocean. He asks if this is the Azor clarity. The sword begins to change form from a demonic sword back to a normal one. He says he doesn't know why the sword met him in such a form, but that sword is the original sword of his progenitor. Rael, the sword his grandfather took, is also a progenitor sword. But unlike his grandfather's, the reason this sword was not even recorded in historical texts is because the power it possesses is extremely different from his family's. He starts to get overcome with the feeling of it. He sees it surging through his body, and when he comes to, he asks, "What is this?" The voice tells him to endure it, as the mana within the sword is being engraved into his body. He says the mana energy flowing into his body has become more intense, and for the sword to have such an effect, it's incredible. He asks the voice what the real name of the sword is. The voice tells him that it is a sword that has to be wielded against demons, devouring their powers, a sword that even demons feared, and that its existence was erased from their memory. A sword born from the deep sea of the north, a place dark yet pure, it is the execution sword, the guillotine. That is the true name of this blade. He stares down at it, and the voice continues, saying that it is a sword that resembles the deep sea's darkness and that it suits his destiny well. He asks who the voice is, saying that judging by the way they call themselves part of the clan, they must be the Blue Dragon, their family's guardian. The voice says that he doesn't have the name to handle their true name yet, and if he can one day dominate the sea with his power, then to come and find them in the North Sea. He thinks about it and seems annoyed, but then asks how he gets out of here. The voice says that he should already know, and he asks if it really is just as simple as breaking it. He says he's always wanted to try breaking the throne, and he starts to infuse his mana into the sword before swinging it down. Outside, the air is tense, and Halo can tell that Pale is worried. He tells him not to worry too much. Pale apologizes. Halo says that it must be painful to watch his son walk a path he's never been on, and he knows it's not easy, but that's all the more reason to compose himself. Pale smiles at his father's words before the Stone of Oath starts to open once more. But it's not only opening, it's starting to break.